The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
Steelworkers condemn BP for engaging in unfair labor practices at an Indiana local. Meanwhile, a financial tech company lays off more than 4,000 employees. Why? Artificial intelligence. And today on the show, we feature the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Welcome to the Thursday, April 2nd edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. We have a total of 3 guests joining us on the show today. They're all members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. And the story they're going to tell you is a story that's happened way too many times in America. Now, you know, the bad trade deals that our elected members of Congress put together over the years. Trade deals where we saw literally millions of jobs first go to Mexico under NAFTA, and then they found their way, after we normalized relations with China, to go to China. China alone probably took close to 4 million jobs out of this country. We're talking good manufacturing jobs. And today, we're going to focus on what is happening to a Whirlpool plant in Amana, Iowa. And we're talking about hundreds of union members, machinists, community leaders, elected officials that gathered about a month ago to demand accountability from Whirlpool as the company prepares to lay off well over 300 workers at that facility. This was a very productive plant. This is a company that makes all kinds of appliances, and they've been very successful and very profitable. And here's the story. According to Machinist Research, Whirlpool has invested more than $1 billion in Mexico. This is over a 20-year period, tripling their workforce there, while the Amana facility, Amana, Iowa, which once employed more than 3,000 workers, could be reduced to just a mere pittance. And this has been going on, like I said, for decades here in America. We're going to be joined by 3 individuals. Sam Cicinelli, who is the Midwest Territory General Vice President. He's going to be joined by Carrie Waddell, who is the Machinist District 6 Assistant Directing Business Rep, and one of the workers, a 31-year Whirlpool worker and a member of Local 1526, that would be Sandy Freytag. They're going to talk about what's going on at that Whirlpool plant. Sadly, it's a story that's been repeated again and again in America. We're going to talk about it here on America's Workforce. Some politicians have been told, you know what, you got to stop the madness. Is that going to happen? Well, don't hold your breath, because a lot of these politicians are the ones that are responsible for the jobs leaving America. So 3 very distinguished individuals, one of them a worker at Whirlpool, will be joining us as our featured guest right here on America's Workforce. Now, brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. The United Steelworkers are condemning BP for engaging in unfair labor practices and illegally locking out nearly 1,000 members of USW Local 7-1. This would be in Whiting, Indiana. They're calling on the company to return to the bargaining table and negotiate a fair contract in good faith. The union said BP's actions disrupt workers' livelihoods and undermine the collective bargaining process, escalating tensions instead of working toward a reasonable agreement that actually respects workers' contributions and safety. Roxanne Brown, the new international president of the Steelworkers, said the following: BP's decision to lock out these skilled workers is unacceptable and unlawful. Generations of union members have kept this refinery running safely and efficiently, and they deserve a contract that reflects their value, not intimidation tactics designed to force concessions. Mike Millsap is the director of Steelworkers District 7. He said the company's actions threaten not only workers and their families, but also the safety and stability of the surrounding community. He went on to say, in its drive to lower staffing levels and implement wage cuts, BP is choosing confrontation and gambling the community's safety on inexperienced replacement workers. This lockout is a direct attack on workers' rights and an attempt to weaken the bargaining power of the very people who make this facility successful. So, we're standing united and will not back down from securing a fair agreement. And then there's Mike Smith. Mike is the chair of the USW National Oil Bargaining Group. He emphasized that the union remains ready to negotiate. As he put it, BP needs to end this lockout immediately and return to serious negotiations. A fair contract is within reach of the company if they're willing to negotiate in good faith. USW.org for more information on that. You know, we've been hearing a lot about the effects of artificial intelligence and the possible, and it's happening, loss of jobs. Well, the CEO of financial company Block announced that the firm is laying off more than 4,000 employees. That is close to 40% of their workforce. 40%. They're citing gains from artificial intelligence. Affected employee roles were deemed superfluous when compared to cheaper and more efficient AI tools. Jack Dorsey is the CEO. And in a letter to shareholders, he stated, intelligence tools have changed what it means to build and run a company. A significantly smaller team using the tools that we're building can do more and do it better. And guess what? Shares of the company rose more than 20% when they made that announcement that they were going to cut 4,000 jobs. How about that? All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the story of a Whirlpool plant in mid-America and how bad trade deals have affected that plant and one community. That story right after this on America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Farrens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. You know, the last couple of decades, we've seen a whole lot of jobs. I mean, a whole lot of jobs leave the United States of America, primarily because of trade deals, bad trade deals that our lawmakers put together. Today, we're going to focus on one union, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, and what's happened at a Whirlpool plant in Amana, Iowa. And we have three individuals joining us on our live line today. Sam Cicinelli. We also have Carrie Waddell and one of the workers, Sandy Freytag. Sam, I'm going to start with you. Maybe you can give us a little background on yourself. This go around here and kind of introduce yourselves to the podcast and tell me what's going on at Whirlpool. Sam, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, sir. Well, thanks for having us to tell our story of this horrific event that's going on at Whirlpool. I'm the General Vice President of the Midwest Territory. This happens to land in my jurisdiction in one of the states that I have. It's unfortunate. A couple weeks ago, I took a call from the servicing rep that Whirlpool is intending on cutting 350 jobs effective March 9th. This is on top of, within the last year, a previous layoff of 250. And they also signaled to us that they are going to cut more jobs by the second quarter. So more cuts are ensuing the end of the second quarter with this company. Not a one-time business decision. We've been following what's been going on at Whirlpool. This is a deliberate pattern of their corporate abandonment and them trying to increase their footprint into the Mexico market. It's unfortunate, what's going on there. Like I said, just a few years ago, we represented more than 3,000 people at this plant. Currently, we're under 1,000 at this point with the most recent layoff. And majority of these jobs, like I said, are migrating to increasing the Mexican production at those facilities and some of the other non-union facilities in the United States.
So, Sam, I mean, at one time, 3,000 people, what are we going to be left with when this is all said and done here? And obviously, we got to fight this tooth and nail. But what do they want as far as how many workers they want at that plant?
My understanding is they're going to mothball the plant. They're going to only have a small crew. It's going to be mostly a facility to house the product. Now, they've signaled to us, and I know Carrie could speak to that a little bit more accurately, but they signaled to us that their intent is to refurbish this plant. But when you lose 3,000 people and they have to find employment and housing elsewhere, you just decimated the entire town, city, state. They're going to look for work elsewhere. So even if they do come back in 5-6 years, what do they think they're going to do? Snap their fingers and rehire 3,000 people that they had a couple of years prior? They had to find work to put food on their table. So
yeah, well, essentially, they're turning it into a warehouse, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Sandy Freytag. Sandy, are you among those being laid off right now, or is this a matter of time that it's going to happen? What's the status of that?
Well, I am. Luckily enough, I have been there for 31, almost 32 years. So I will be in this for a while. But if they continue with the layoffs and the warehousing, a lot of people down there have been there. They've devoted their lives and their whole working careers to Whirlpool. I was hired in 94. In 94, there was a lot of people that were hired. So there are a lot of people still down there. I do want to point out, just less than a year ago, in June of 25, we had 1,900 workers. Now, they had the layoff in June. They just had the other one. But they are also not replacing anyone who leaves for any reason. So If we went from 1,900 workers in June with 2 small layoffs, they're slowly just killing that plant off. And it's just a quiet death. They're not announcing it. They're able to release all those people through attrition. So it is really concerning on what their future is. We're hearing that they want to run new product, but we're not seeing any of it. The biggest thing that we are hearing is warehouse space. That's not going to take 300 people. That's not going to take 200 people to run warehouse space. So it's very concerning. I do want to point out that I am the first shift plant chair or chief steward, depending on what your shops call them. And seeing all the people that this has affected, whether it's ones who've lost their jobs or people who are looking for a new position inside the factory, it's just devastating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right here at my house, my very next door neighbors, Whirlpool for a time had recruited immigrants and new Americans to work at their facility because of the reputation they got for hiring and laying off consistently. A lot of people didn't want to go back there because they did lay off so many because they overhired. People that live right next door to me, there were 3 families living together. All 3 of them have lost their jobs at Whirlpool. It is, I don't know how they will retain their house when they counted on, those incomes. It's very sad. A lot of people don't have any options. There's just, we don't have a community that can absorb 1,000 people losing their jobs. And it's not just the 340 layoff. It is closing a plastics plant in Kelowna now because Whirlpool was one of their biggest suppliers. It's far-reaching consequences what Whirlpool is doing. I do want to note that we are the only union plant that Whirlpool owns in North America. And I think that's telling that we're taking some really big hits and going to lose all our product and basically turn into warehouse space.
Amazing. How many people live in Amana, Iowa? You said that this is going to be devastating to the community. And I mean, thinking back, 3,000 jobs, and now we're going to turn this into a warehouse. But as far as the population of Amana, because this is, like I said, it's going to be devastating.
I don't know what the percentages are, but we have a lot of our workers that live in Amana and around Amana. There are a lot of small communities that are held up by all the workers that work at Amana. So we have Marengo and Williamsburg, and we are the largest manufacturer in Iowa County in Iowa. To have that be possibly closed down, or if not closed down, sorely reduced in the amount of numbers that we have is going to affect everyone. Amana is a tourist town, but it is also a lot of things are supported by the workers that go to work. Just something as simple as the corner convenience store. Obviously, there's a lot of traffic in there from the workers coming to and from work.
Yeah, this is pretty much the hollowing out of America. I believe we have Carrie Waddell. Carrie, you want to join the conversation here? Carrie is with District 6, which encompasses that area where the layoffs are happening. Carrie, a little background on yourself and your role in all of this. Go ahead, brother.
I came out of that shop. I worked there for 36 years. I took a position with the IAM, and now I service the employees down there.
Carrie, talk to me about Whirlpool asking for money to make sure that, over the years, you see a lot of these corporate types that say, hey, you know what, if you're going to stay in the community, you have to give us some tax breaks. Did any of that happen in order to keep the plant there over the years? What do you know about that?
So my understanding is that locally at that factory, they've received $21 million in tax incentives. And Whirlpool as a whole has received around $70 million in tax incentives. And that's to keep the jobs, locally and to manufacture in the United States. But what we're seeing happen right here is they're outsourcing the product that they made here in America. And the employees are just paying for it. That's exactly what's happening down there.
Well, I understand that Whirlpool invested a lot of money in Mexico, and I guess that happened some years ago. So this was, I guess, this was the whole plan in the first place. Can you speak to that?
Well, I mean, it appears that way. I believe it was 2021 time frame. They've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, and actually over $1 billion in Mexico in the past 20 years. And now, if you go to the retailers and you look at what's available on the floor at the retail stores, you're seeing foreign-made refrigerators that were once made right here in Iowa, in Amana.
So, Carrie, I understand there was a rally recently in Iowa trying to make sure that everybody was on the same page with this. And I don't know what can be done right now. I mean, these corporations, they always want, some tax write-offs or incentives to stay in a community, and then they bolt anyway. And I know you were part of that rally. Let's talk about that. What happened at that rally?
So we had some of our elected officials there. We had some senators and congressmen. We had the news media there. And we wanted to just raise awareness to what's really happening down there. What you see in the paper, you'll see a layoff of last year, 250. You'll see 341 with this current round. But what you don't see is that slowly over the past 3 years, they've just eliminated assembly line and assembly line. We had 5 major assembly lines running multiple shifts here about 3 years ago, and we're down to 1 assembly line. It's on 2 shifts currently, but they've told us at the end of the second quarter, they're going to take another shift off of that. We don't know what the numbers are going to look like for employees. My guess is closer to 300 or 400 here by mid-year. And then once again, like Sam said, that's from a peak of 3,300 employees, around 2020, 2021. What's happening is like a rolling layoff, but they are eliminating jobs within the factory, basically forcing people out that way so they don't get the publicity of all the layoffs.
Mexico has taken a lot of jobs. It started with NAFTA back in the early 90s here, and I know their wages don't even come close to what they are here in the United States. And, we're hearing so much about, we're going to bring those jobs back. And it's my understanding that the president of the machinists, Brian Bryant, sent letters to every member of Iowa's congressional delegation, along with President Trump, who said that, a lot of these jobs were going to come back. And here we're seeing jobs just continue to leave. So who can speak to, has there been, Sam, probably this question is for you, any reaction to that so far? I mean, you got a lot of community support. I'm just wondering if we can turn this thing around. What do you think?
There has not been any reaction, sadly. So this president pulled a muscle in his arm, patting himself on the back about how he renegotiated the USMCA. And it was supposed to be sold as a new and improved NAFTA, which is supposed to protect these good paying manufacturing jobs. Yet this story and hundreds of others, complete different story. So the only people that responded back was Congressperson Miller Meeks and Hinson. Still crickets from the president. Even going back to a couple years ago, we had a Boeing strike, and it was a different administration with President Biden. Our international president reached out to President to intervene in the strike that we had out in Seattle. And within 2.5 hours of receiving that fax, President Biden assigned Julie Sue to intervene to try to mitigate a resolution. And then we'll fast forward it to the strike that we had in Missouri with the Trump administration. We did the same thing, writing a letter, and we're still waiting for a response. So I don't anticipate any response, sadly, from this administration. And there's only, like I said, 2 Congress people that actually responded to assist in this unfortunate matter.
What about the governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds? Has she done anything to turn this around?
We haven't heard anything.
Nothing? Okay. Carrie, I know you're in the middle of all of this. What's the next plan of action here?
Well, right now, we're just hoping that raising awareness. I know that the international president sent a letter to Mark Bitzer, the CEO of Whirlpool, wanting to discuss what's going on down there. We're hoping that eventually we get some support here in Iowa. Like I say, we had a strong Democratic support when we were at the Capitol. We've had a couple of, just the other day, they announced that another factory that supplies parts to Whirlpool is going to shut down. And we're hoping that somewhere in the state we get some attention and they push back a little bit on what they're doing. And that's what we're hoping to see is is that.
Let's go back to Sandy Freytag. Now, Sandy, you worked at the plant for over 30 years. I would assume you're at like a retirement age right now, or what do you see in your future?
I will stay as long as I can stay. I still have a 14-year-old at home, so retiring is probably not going to be in the near future, but I do know a lot of people that I started when I have, that they have now decided to retire because their jobs are so uncertain. Trying to navigate the job market at our age makes it a little harder. But when you devote your entire career to a company, that makes it harder too to start over, obviously.
Yeah. I would imagine, when you work at a company that long, you live there, you breathe the air in that, you make friends, and you work so close together. It's like a chunk of you is gone when that company closes. I'm just wondering, and I'm sure that feeling is with you now, and with so many people that have already left the company because of Whirlpool's decision here. I'm just wondering. I mean, again, this is the hollowing out of the middle class of America. I'm just wondering what you can say to that.
I don't know what you can say. It's heartbreaking to have places where, honestly, I've spent more time at Whirlpool than I did growing up, because I started when I was 25. I've been there over 30 years. It's a hard shift. It was a good job when I started there. There were people lined up to apply there. It's hard to see people lose everything because they're losing their job, and people that are still there that really aren't certain what's going to happen down the road, that have been there, 10 years. People that have been there 10 years are afraid they're not going to have a job. I don't see changes happening in the factory fast enough to sustain the majority of us that are left. I don't.
Yeah, it's certainly sad indeed. And I know this has been a tough podcast for all of you here. We do have to get the messaging out here, and hopefully with that messaging, things may change. You never know. You got to try to be as optimistic as you can. But we have seen this so many times in America over the years. And again, it goes back to these trade deals, ridiculous trade deals. And I know the USMCA came up. They're going to try to renegotiate that this summer. I don't know where they're going to go with that, but we'll stay on the situation. Maybe that might turn things around. I don't know. All I can tell you is this. You have a forum. You have a place here on America's Workforce. And once the communities all around America understand what's going on in America, maybe something will be done. We don't know. But you got to be loud. You got to stay proud for what you have accomplished over the years. And I thank you so much, all of you. Sam Cicinelli, Carrie Waddell, and you just heard Sandy Freytag here, all part of what's been going on right in the heart of America, Amana, Iowa, where nearly hundreds of IAM Union members, community leaders, elected officials recently gathered to demand accountability from Whirlpool, a company that's made a whole lot of money on the backs of workers. And you know what? They need to stay here. They need to stay here and do business to keep America strong. Thanks to all of you for joining us here on America's Workforce.
Thank you.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Tomorrow, the Columbus Central Ohio Building Trades, and it's our first Friday with Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Until then, all of you, have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.